the 80-20 rule in this situation is just first of all, balance your content. And it's very simple. 80% should be about your life, your travels, your reality, your struggles. Don't just do all the wonderful things out there. People don't relate to you. You're trying to elicit emotion from people. If you can tell a story, elicit emotion, and connect, you're hitting the big three as far as people engaging. So 80% should be personal and about 20% should be business.
If you're struggling with your vitality, energy, mood, focus, or sleep, this podcast is for you. Your host, Dr. Tsung, ER doctor and aerospace flight surgeon, will help you reach for the stars and remove the barriers or blockades that have been holding you back from living your best life. If you've been challenged by your health, relationships, or productivity, then it's time for a breakthrough. So here's your host, Dr. Tsung.
Hello, welcome to It's Not Rocket Science Show, and I'm your host, Dr. Tsung. And today I have Scott Rammage here currently on the show. He's going to be talking to us in the first part on social media tactics, because a lot of us are really busy and either posting on social media yourself to get a wider audience, or you're having a company or a virtual assistant to help you. And how to know what you should be spending your time on, because your time is so valuable. And he's going to be teaching us the 80-20 of the tactics that you should be spending your time on. And so later on, we're going to work another session in part 2, and we're going to be discussing how virtual assistants can help you achieve your goals and in your personal life. First, I'm going to have Scott introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what you do, why you do it, and of your end vision of this whole thing. So thank you, Scott, for being on the show.
Thank you, Anne. It's an honor to be on, and I have had an absolute blast working with you and the people you've introduced me to. And so it's an honor to be here. So I am, I guess, a virtual assistant professional, a pro. I definitely know a lot about finding, hiring, leveraging virtual assistants. I have been fortunate enough to spend enough time in the social media world to create a bit of a personal brand around a beauty of a personal brand, first of all, is that you can do multiple things, and it all kind of leads into that funnel, that personal funnel of yours for whatever you're offering. For me, it's multiple things, but I kind of live in the podcasting world and the virtual assistant world, and being in the podcasting world is what led me to virtual assistants, which then led me to where I'm at today. So I take incredible joy in helping other entrepreneurs and super busy people kind of leverage superpowers of other people to really kind of gain the most effectiveness for your time. And it's not always about buying time back, because, and I know, like, if I said, hey, Anne, I'm going to give you an extra 20 hours a week, you're going to fill that with more work. So I want to put a disclaimer here, is just by getting a VA or doing things in social media and getting more leads is not necessarily going to free up your time, because we are the type of people who are going to fill it, hopefully with family and some other really cool things, but there's a lot of opportunities out there. So I kind of just live in those worlds, and I've spent a lot of time in social media, and I love helping other people leverage that tool, because it is incredibly powerful and very under leveraged by most people. Thank
you. And I totally agree. After I got a virtual assistant, I think I'm busier than I'm doing more things, because I can leverage more and more tasks to him. So you're right. And so would you tell me a little bit more about your kind of end vision of, why you're doing what you're doing in terms of helping people on social media? And then we can talk about virtual assistant later, but we can focus on social media right now. What is your end vision? What can people kind of employ some of the tactics you're going to be talking about? Where can they go? Where are people starting at when you first, talk to them?
Yeah. So if I understand your question correctly, like, when you leverage social media the correct way, you're actually attracting either like-minded people or people who are what I would call your avatar, your ideal client. And I just see so many people out there using social media haphazardly and not even getting close to leveraging what they can leverage. And I'm so passionate about this because what it's done for me is it's brought me dream clients and dream opportunities I never would have had without it. And having been an entrepreneur and dabbling in so many things for so many years, that is really something everybody struggles with, is how do I find the people that I will bring me opportunities and that I can actually give opportunities to. So for me to be able to share that is a gift. I've been shared it, all of these tactics I'm talking about, I did not make up. I've just learned them from other people and been able to use them, integrate them, and see the results of doing these things. And so my whole goal here for the listeners is that they can walk away with a basic idea of like, wow, I didn't realize that I could do X, Y, and Z just by using social media, and kind of give them the big picture of how do I use my personal life and professional outcomes and kind of mix it all up and present something to people that's clear and concise and that attracts them to who I am and what I'm doing.
Can you give any sort of concrete numbers of what you've been able to achieve?
Wow, that is a really, really good question. So I can tell your database.
Scientific. Yes.
Yeah, I'm very
or it could
anecdotal.
It could be one aspect. It doesn't have to be, a rough estimate.
Absolutely. So I'll give an example. A few weeks ago, from one post, I was able to draw lines back to a person that reached out to me through my messages. And I drew that, like, it's kind of like a CSI. You've got all the lines going. I'm like, where did this guy come from? And because he was my ideal client, very successful. If he wants to do something, he can afford to do it. And he reached out to me. And it was from a post that was non-business related, but he was reaching out for a business related circumstance. So I actually did this because I love looking at like certain variables and removing variables and just adding one at a time. So I kind of reverse engineered it. And I'm like, this is literally a result of what I'm going to try and teach in this very short time that we have. And the deal isn't done yet, but the opportunities, if I were to give you some names and some things that are coming from it, it's a dream come true. Like literally going to be connected with top 10 in the world in the news within the next year. So I don't I know that's kind of anecdotal, but I've seen this happen over and over again. And the connections I'm making, it's bringing the people that we spend so much time, like, how can I market? How can I put money and create a funnel and create, lead magnets and do all these things, where instead I'm just having a magnetic personality and intentional actions that are pulling the right type of people into my circle.
And so we talk how this can be powerful. We're going to get to the tactics soon, but I want to make sure, we understand like why and the end vision of how this could be powerful. So of course, marketing, reaching your target audience, reaching your niche, and even for personal, if you want to share food recipes, you want to share your kids, or if you want to share any amazing your travel, the reason you're posting is to have reach. If you want to have reach, to share whatever you want, like the value with the world. So it would be helpful to learn these tactics. And what would you say to those people who want to reach more people who have a business or may not have a business, but they want to reach more people in a way, but are scared to go public?
It is really scary. That's a really good question, because that was the thing for me. It's like, wow, I'm putting myself out on the line there. First of all, people are going to be judging. People are going to misunderstand. Am I going to sound salesy? Am I going to get bombarded with people trying to sell me things? And sometimes the answer to those are all yes. But it's a really, really small price to pay as long as you're authentic. It's a really small price to pay for building on your dream client list. Like, who is your actual avatar? I don't know if that's language you're used to, but your ideal client, and having those people literally come into your world in a very strategic way that you could not duplicate otherwise. And it does not include cold DMs. And so it's a very small price to pay. If you've ever tried marketing, traditional marketing, funnel marketing, this is so much easier and free. which is wonderful. And unless you're leveraging a VA, and then it's incredibly inexpensive, but it's absolutely 100% worth it if you're trying to develop a following or grow your circle of people that you can leverage and can leverage you. It's that basically what you have to look at yourself as is like anything I'm learning, anything I've been through, anything I'm experiencing is a benefit, is a gift to somebody else, because they may be going through that or are going to go through that or have been through that. So then there's that emotional connection. So the more real you can be, the more you're going to attract the type of people that you want to be around.
Yeah, I completely agree on authenticity, which it took me a lot of work going through 40 years of Zen to not care about what other people think, to not have, the imposter syndrome come back so many times. It just comes back every few times now. And that, when you're scared of going public, that is when you're thinking, it's about me. It's about me. But if you change your mindset to, no, it's about them. It's about them. How can I serve them? Because if you're quiet and you're not delivering what you need to deliver to the world, then in a way that is being selfish in a way, right? Because of fear, you're being selfish and not sharing your value with the world. And this was taught to me by actually a public speaking class from Mind Valley and Lisa Nichols. And, that really hit me for me to, begin this podcast, because I can no longer be selfish anymore because of my own fear.
So I have a story about that. I run a men's group. I have an online men's group, and then I do events for men, mostly entrepreneurial men. And I ran one this summer. And this was really hard for me to be honest, open, genuine, because I knew that there was going to be judgment, because I have values and beliefs that may not align with everybody, but I wanted to speak them. And imposter syndrome is huge. It is absolutely real. No matter how successful you are, it's real. So I experience this all the time. But at this men's event, I realized the impact of your message if it changes one person's life. So just by being authentic and posting and doing these things strategically, I had approximately 20 men pay good money to come spend time with me in Montana. 3 of those men, 3 successful entrepreneurial family men on separate occasions, one-on-one, came up to me and said, Scott, I've had a gun in my mouth in the last month or last year. This is life-changing for me. This is letting me know that I'm not alone in this journey. So I only say that story to tell people, like, you never know the impact that you have, and what you have to share is going to be a gift and possibly life-saving to people. Even if it's real estate or coaching, those things can have a massive impact. And you have to put away all of your own perceptions of what you think other people are going to think about it, and just say, man, if this falls on one person and it changes their life for the better, it's worth it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I say before my podcast too. Yeah, if one person listens to one tactic or one sentence and can do that 2-millimeter change that sends them on a completely different trajectory, then all of this would be worth it. So I think I really resonate with what you're saying. And for all of the listeners, please, before you go out on social media, before you post, just think about, as long as you're authentic, you're true to yourself, you're looking to serve and share, then it really doesn't matter what other people are thinking of you. I remember the first time, we're going to get to the tactics soon, but I think this is really important. The first time I got a negative message on my YouTube, I initially, I think it was like, you're fake or something like that, or I can't remember the full thing on my YouTube. For a split second, I, didn't feel very good. And then the next second, because of all the self-work I've done, I started celebrating, because I was like, I actually am like, people are viewing my videos enough for me to get a negative message. Thank God, because before that, I was getting like 5 views.
Right. The message that keeps coming back to me is hurt people hurt people. And so typically somebody who's hurting is going to do something to poke and prod and try and hurt other people. And I've talked to a few people, and some very, very large names that I've talked to personally they have several approaches: completely ignore and realize that person's hurting and, looking for interaction, or they reach out, and this is my favorite, and they say, hey man, I read your comment. How can I help you today? Just respond in pure love. And then they realized they started to make the connection. That person isn't like hateful. They're just hurting and they're reaching out. It's like little kids acting out to gain attention. And so I think another great practice that I've done is I go look at other people's reels. I look at their whatever kind of content I want to create. And I realize, holy cow, like that guy's not that good looking, or that shirt looks horrible on him, or he's bald like me, or like he's up there, he's older than me. And I'm realizing it doesn't have any effect on their impact. They are still getting huge views, wonderful comments. And it's really good practice to be like, look, what I look like doesn't matter. It's the message that matters. And so putting away and doing some intentional practices to understand you're comparing maybe to that superstar on Instagram. Like I do know a guy that gets millions and millions of views. He's here local and he's just massive on social media. I will never be that guy. I'll never be him. So it's a really good practice to look at other people and realize, wait, that's just one aspect. And that's not necessarily who I'm trying to attract. And so that comparison game is super dangerous, but I use it to like, oh, wow, like I'm cool. I'm okay because my message matters. My looks don't, or whatever we're insecure about.
Yeah. So look back in a way, looking at the gains, not the gap. In a way, like the gains that you've achieved so much instead of like the gap. There's a book, The Gap and the Gain.
It's an amazing book.
Yeah. So not look at somebody who's like a lot better than you, but really looking back from your post one and then look at, how far you've come. So, just to summarize, yes, to figure out the why that you want to go on social media. Is it to serve? What message you want to serve? Who's your clientele, your niche, your ideal client, your avatar, however you want to call it. Do some self-work and just think that you're doing this for them. It's not about them, not about you. Just keep repeating that. Absolutely. It's about them. It's not about me. And then before you post, whatever you are doing for social media. So now, after you've done all that, so there could be two groups of people listening to this. Number one, people who are established, have social media accounts already on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. So to those people, what are some of the highest yield or 80-20, what we say, tactics that they should use in order to reach their client or have more views on their posts?
Wonderful question. And this is good for either group, whether you're building or you already have, is the 80-20 rule in this situation is just first of all, balance your content. And it's very simple. 80% should be about your life, your travels, your reality, your struggles. Don't just do all the wonderful things out there. People don't relate to you. You're trying to elicit emotion from people. If you can tell a story, elicit emotion, and connect, you're hitting the big three as far as people engaging. So 80% should be personal and about 20% should be business. About once a week, you should be doing what I would call a blunt post, where you're bluntly saying what it is you have to offer for people. And then also, if you have multiple things to offer, at least once a quarter, you should write some sort of post that says, hey, I know sometimes it's hard to follow what I do because you may think I'm a doctor, you may think I'm a real estate agent, you may think I'm doing this, or I have short-term rentals or whatever, and then lay it out for them. And this is why I do this. I'm super passionate. I also help people do this. And I've been doing that, and people are like, holy cow, I didn't realize it. A lot of people think you can only do one thing at a time, which we all know is, not the way we operate. And so you got to understand that your personal life and experiences are drawing people in, interacting, causing interaction. So they actually see that 20% that is very focused on, like I'll put out a dad post or how to be a good husband post. And it's boom, it's personal, but it's saying, hey, look, I have authority in this area. I have experience in this area. And so 80-20 is a really incredibly important thing. Here's the one thing, if anybody can take away, and if we only get to talk about this one thing today, this is it. You've got to have a list of like 20 to 40 people that are like your top, they say your top 100 list or whatever. These are the people that you would love to have as a client. Like, I would love to have X be working with me. They can be like very well known. They can not be well known, maybe just in the community. Then you need to go and you follow those people, and you need to start strategically connecting with their connections. So strategically inviting their people that are connected with them. I always look at their profile first. And then if I like them, I'll invite them. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get people like them and ultimately them to engage in whatever it is you have to offer. And so let's take real estate, for instance. I'm not really all that knowledgeable in the real estate world, but let's say it benefits you to have mortgage people. It benefits you to have realtors and brokers in your circle because they can refer people. And realty, maybe you want investors. So what you start doing is that list of 25 are people that are complementary to your business. So that's another way to look at it. So I'm going to start friending really powerful people in that area. And what happens is you start to do that is people start to friend you or follow you or connect with you, depending on the platform, of course. And that's what's happening to me. I'm not going out and friending people anymore. I've picked my 25. I've done the interactions, and now I have people coming in every single day. And then if you're on Facebook, if you can get to professional mode, which means you're posting often. I think it's actually easier to do now. You're posting often, you're getting a lot of interaction, you get professional mode. And then it gets even better because I only accept friendships or friend requests from people who I actually want to know about. All the rest become followers. So you just start building followers. So they're seeing everything you're doing and they're not filling your feed. And so this is where magic happens. People are like, hey, I'm really resonating with X. I'd love to connect. And this happens all the time to me now. I had 13 Zoom calls yesterday. It was exhausting, but these are connections. These are people I'm meeting through just being consistent and intentional on my choice of social media platform, which is Facebook.
So what are you doing after you friend them? Exactly.
Same thing as always. I am not cold DMing them. I'm not DMing them. I am interacting, and I'll talk about that. I'm interacting and I'm intentionally posting the way that I talked about earlier, probably 2 to 3 times a day. Two is my minimal. And whether
posting
that's
to your feed or posting to their commenting? To
my feed. So I'm feeding my feed. And then every day I'm going in and I'm picking like 5 to 10 of those people that are my top 25. And I'm going in and liking and making a very intentional comment to them and commenting to people in that who I want to attract. Then they'll friend you. So I'm going in, a couple times a day. Oh, boom, that person. I'm going to comment on it. I'm going to interact with that person. I'm going to interact with people that are interacting with him or her that are kind of have the same messaging. If they're arguing or whatever, I'm ignoring. And that just kind of starts this, like I said before, you're bumping the bee's nest. You're shaking the hive, and everybody starts to swirl around. It's like, who's this Scott guy? Like, and then they look you up and they're like, oh, he's got some cool stuff. He's sharing his life. He does this VA thing. He does podcasting things, and boom, follow. And so that intentional, like going in, interacting in your top, let's say your top 10 folks, and then interacting with people in there, and then they start friending you. It's just a magic. It works so well. It works incredibly well.
Is there a timing you would do this before you post or after you post?
Yeah. So I talked about this. You kind of call it, what is it? Like, post, ghost, and then come back. So go stir the nest, go into Facebook and start liking and commenting on people's stuff, because what you're doing is you're kind of waking them up to you. You're playing this algorithm that all these social media outlets have. So I'm going and interacting, and then I'm making a post, and I keep it pretty simple. I'll do like 5, and then I go upload my post. Now they are seeing what I've done because I've interacted with them. Then I go away. When I come back, there may be 10 comments. And so then I go in and I comment back. Every comment that comments to me, I comment back, but I don't do it all at once. So then I'll come back a little later. And this is where a VA comes in handy. Come back a little later, comment, thanks for that. That's awesome. I really appreciate your insight. Or, wow, that's a crazy story. Or, I know, right? Or something like that. Always words, but I do it separately. So because every time you have interaction in that, you're bumping yourself back up into that algorithm for another 60 seconds. And so even old posts that have a ton of interaction, I'll go back and comment on something like a month later, and then boom, all these comments come back. And when people do that, when they come up with an old post of yours, they're going to go look through your timeline. This person's interesting. And so you just really kind of sitting there, poking at it and continuing this conversation in there. And then you're going to start learning, oh, that kind of post really resonated with people. And you can start kind of gaming it then and understanding, doing that kind of self-analysis of like, okay, this gets really good interaction. And then here's something I want everyone to hear very carefully is probably some of the absolute best connections you make are going to be with people who never comment or like or share any of your content. I just get messages in my message. I really resonate with what you're putting out. I would love to have a call with you and talk about VAs. I'd love to have a call with you and talk about potential of starting a podcast. They don't interact at all. So even when there's very low interaction, you interacting in their stuff, they're seeing it. There's just certain types of people that don't take the time. Those are the types of people who don't have VAs. They don't take the time to interact. And so your impact is much, much, much bigger than you think. Now, I want you to understand there's like a 1 in 10 rule. For every 10 people you're out there commenting that are like your ideal clients, only one of them is going to reciprocate that. And they're going to start commenting on yours regularly, which helps your algorithm. So you can kind of just play those numbers and play those games and just keep doing it. And like I said, you can have a VA doing it and train that VA how to be really authentic, train them in your voice. And there's ways to do that so that it's not just, I have one guy that gives me a thumb up or a bomb every time I post. Like every time I'm like, he's got a VA and he hasn't trained his VA how to answer. And it's so clear. And so that's inauthentic to me, right? So there are bad ways to do it and there's good ways to do it. But it's that reciprocity starts to really kick in where they're like, hey, they're always commenting on my stuff. I want to do the same for them. And they do. And now they're kicking your algorithm way up. So it's a beautiful thing. You have to put in more work than you get back initially, but eventually that thing just snowballs and becomes huge.
And when you're talking about commenting being insightful versus like emojis, what are some of the weighing of the various types of comments, and how would you train a VA? Would you have them follow you? Would you do example comments for them? Would you have them give you an example comment before he posts? How does that work?
So first of all, shares are super, super heavy. So if you can write something that gets shared, you're going to get massive exposure. That's not easy to do. And sometimes you can have friends that you're like, hey, every week we're going to share one of each other's posts. That's a really great way to do it. Kind of have these partners in kind of your network. Likes are very low rated, but it's still important. Like a like, a love, a care, or whatever. And I'm speaking Facebook language. This relates to everything. It's the same across the board. Time watching or time on that post is weighed pretty heavily, as well as comments are weighed a lot heavier than likes. Now, comments should be a minimum of 3 actual words. 5 is better. So I really have to work sometimes like getting creative and making comments because I'm out there to help other people as well. So I'm doing this for others. I don't just say, awesome, fire emoji. I said, wow, this really resonated. I needed to hear this today. Or I've been there, done that. Thank you for reminding me. I always throw an emoji in anyway, because I think it's fun. But those are weighed heavier. And so getting comments, and then as far as your VA, we can talk more about this later, but it's going to take some time to develop them to understand what you want. But once you take the time to do it, that just gets it. It's kind of this, it just takes off on its own. And so for me, my first week or two would be like, hey, find posts, send me a screenshot, and then I'm going to tell you how to answer, and then go back and answer. So it's a lot of work. And I'll say, do that 6 times a day for the next week. They send me a screenshot, 6, I write a response, they go do it, rinse and repeat. Well, it's almost like machine learning, right? You're repeating to them and you're showing them patterns over and over, and you're being authentic. You're not writing it in terms that you think they might write it. You're writing it in the way that you would write it. Before you know it, they're going to be writing comments back that you're like, dang, I wish I would have said that. And that's what's happened for me, is they're super authentic. They're in my voice, and it's almost like they come from my heart. It's crazy. But because I modeled that over and over and over and over again, and then have them report back to you or go check daily what they're writing, and feedback, just constant feedback and conversation with them, saying, hey, this one didn't come off as well as it should have, or it doesn't sound quite right. Here's what I would do differently. And then instead of fixing it yourself, unless it's like, oh my gosh, I can't have that out there. Instead of fixing yourself, have them go fix it. This is big for VAs, no matter what they're doing. Instead of fixing yourself, even though it takes more time, tell them how you want it and have them fix it, because then they're learning that the right way to do things according to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we're going to jump into much more detail in the next session when we talk about VAs. And to summarize regarding the 80-20, number one, you want to go find 25 to 40 accounts of people who are complementary to you, or that you want to work with or partner up with, have as a client, or just simply want to share your values, your information with those people, those accounts. And then number two, then you want to stir the bee's nest before you post. So you go to 5 accounts perhaps, or 5 comments, give some insightful comments, and you want to have more than 3 words, preferably 5 words, and something that is, that is authentic and not fake, and not just like a fire emoji or love it or heart and things like that. And then after that, you want to go and then start posting. You can post once a day, twice a day, whatever you want to do, a few times a week. But before you post, try to stir the bee's nest a little bit before you actually do it. And then when people find you, when they start commenting back, then you want to take your time to comment back. You don't want to do it all at once, but go back, respond to one, then ghost a little bit, and then come back and respond to another one. And then you'll be able to see the interactions is going to kind of push your post up to higher priority with the algorithm. Would you say that's a correct summary, Scott?
Very good synopsis of it. And there's so many more techniques involved in here, but that's the wonderful starting spot. Like that, if you do that consistently, the one thing that I would lead to our next session with is you're going, holy cow, whether it be YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, that is so time consuming. I have the answer for that.
And well, so for people who have not started on anything, what platform should they pick?
That is the best question ever. It's the one that you like to interact in. It's kind of like, what's the best workout for me? The best workout's one you'll enjoy and do every day, or do enough. Now, that's the one answer, but you need to know where your people are hanging out. If you're trying to build a real estate portfolio and all those folks are hanging out on LinkedIn, and you're focusing all your time on Instagram, and all you're getting is people following you that are like 20, then you probably need to reevaluate. So you need to know your audience and go there, but you need to know that where you go has to be consistent. So I've talked to people like, my real audience is on LinkedIn, but I can't stand being in there. And they're not leveraging VAs. I'm like, well, where are you going to spend your time? Facebook. Good. Are there people in there? Yes, just not as many. Okay. Well, if that's what you're going to do it. Now, there's this whole thing out there about omnipresence. Like there's people saying be omnipresent. There's people saying don't be omnipresent. The people saying don't be omnipresent are because they're not leveraging other people to help them in there. The way to be omnipresent and being multiple areas is by leveraging a team, whether it's local or a VA or whatever, to help you duplicate yourself in those areas. And so the ideal, of course, is to be in two or three of the platforms where your people are hanging out. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I think my ideal client, a lot of times they're busy. They're probably not going to be watching YouTube. That's why I pick major form is actually the podcast. And that's how I consume my information. And I put it on 1.52x. So that's the reason why I picked this platform. Yeah. And it's awesome that, my VA and the team can kind of cut up all this into and just distribute it to multiple social media. So I only have to do it once, essentially.
I don't want to string this out too long, but you make an amazing point. My people are consuming podcasts as well. Then it's break it up into a bunch of small pieces, put it out on all of them because you can. And the whole thing is driving everybody back to your podcast where they're really hearing you talk. So all of those are just like little feelers. Of course, you can have something like Linktree in your Instagram, so it leads them back to the podcast. So you want to know where you want to direct them, and how this call to action thing is incredibly important. Don't leave people like breadcrumbs. Leave them like signs that say, go here for more. Breadcrumbs are great, but sometimes we think people can draw the connections between the lines. You got to lead them to the water. And so podcasting for professionals, and I listen 1.5. It's a little nuts, drives my wife crazy. But I listen 1.5 and I consume a lot of podcasts, and that's how I buy things. That's how I make decisions. So
yeah. And so speaking of leaving breadcrumbs, what would you say is, the top resource that people should look up, or, is there a book? And also, how can people find you? What is their call to action from you?
Oh, that's such a good one. My websites are all being rebuilt right now. So I don't want to give people those because that would be horrible. So you can simply email me at scott@mediamachine.info. You can follow me on almost any platform. I'm absolutely 100% most present on Facebook, Scott Rammage. Those are the best places. Did I answer your question?
And the resources, any other resources, books or websites that you suggest that people go in regards to social media? Social
media is so rapidly changing. It's really hard to find a book that's actually going to help you. Where I've found the absolute most is in masterminds I pay for, getting in rooms with people who are doing it right. And so that's without giving you specific ones, which may or may not be good fits, because it is really personal depending on your thing. One of the things I find, I follow people that I know are doing stellar in it, and they're usually 2 steps ahead. So that's one of the best ways to understand what kind of content to be putting out, because you can literally find leaders in your area and find things that resonate with you and put out the exact same things. But yeah, I haven't yet to find a book that's keeping up with this, or anything really. It's just personal research.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a fantastic idea. Just follow the people that you love, that, you look at the people you already follow, the reason why you follow them, the content that you love, and just emulate them if that's what the style and the content, if that's what you want to do, and it's working for them. And my call to action for the audience is, again, just do one thing. If it's going to follow 25 accounts right now, right after this, or record a 1-minute video right now, something that's on your mind that you think can help the world, or, go reach out to Scott. And because if you need help, then reach out to Scott and see what he can do for you in terms of social media, perhaps hiring a VA for you to leverage this, because there are some experts VAs who can do all this for you. And if you're in the crunch for time, just go to itsnotrocketscienceshow.com. And over there, you can sign up for my 7-day video masterclass on productivity, essentially how to 2-3x your productivity in just half the time. Or if you go to the website where there's Instagram, the link tree, it also has the Facebook group, all the 7-day courses uploaded on there. So I want to thank you guys for all of your attention. I hope that this was helpful to you. And I really appreciate, Scott. Thank you so much for your time today, providing massive value. So thank you again.
Thank you, Ann.
And just remember, everything is within you now.
That's it for today's episode. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review in iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a private VIP day for a health and life makeover with Dr. Tsung herself. Then be sure to head on over to itsnotrocketscienceshow.com and pick up your free gift from Dr. Tsung. Then join us on the next episode.